Kristen Hedgecock.
And I'm Ash Matson. You're listening to Apta Sophia,
which means useful wisdom in the pursuit of biblical womanhood.
Welcome to Apta Sophia. My name is Ash Matson, and I am here with my co-host, Kristen Hedgecock.
Hey.
Heyo. We are sitting in my living room, and we are about to dive into verse 4 of Titus 2. But before we do that, we need to address a very, very important question. And that is, Kristen, would you rather have hands that continue to grow as you age or feet that continue to grow as you age?
I'm going to chop them both off if that happens. Just walk around with nubs.
You'd rather have nubs?
No, I'd rather have like bionic hands.
What if they grew? Like, I think the most important thing to consider here is, are they growing? How much are they growing?
Yeah, that's true.
What if you got
because our feet are always growing. You know, they never stop growing.
Is it like our noses and our ears?
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm excited to see what I look like when I'm older. I wish, I don't know, some older people are like really cute with the big noses and ears. I don't know if I'm going to be one of those, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to look really interesting.
Well, if you keep that piercing in your nose, then you will be the most interesting older 90-year-olds.
No, I'm not going to be novel at all.
Hanging.
You don't get like a saggy. You don't get saggy noses. That's not how that works.
Growing the center of
you get a hook
gravity.
Nose?
Just I don't know. I'm making it up.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not going to be novel though, because our generation is incredibly tattooed and pierced.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true.
But anyways, if your hands grew too fast or too large, you couldn't move. You would just be like, you'd be stuck with these big old flap hands.
Yeah. So do you think like in nursing homes or wherever we are when we're older, we're going to play the game of like, what do you think it is? And we're all going to like show each other our tattoos. But because tattoos, I worked in a nursing home, never look like the original thing that it was when you're 90. So we're just going to go around like playing these games of like, so what do you think this is? So what do you think this is? Here, I have one for you.
Yeah.
I think that.
I figure like when people are like, those tattoos are going to look horrible when you're older.
They're absolutely right.
I'm like, well, yeah, but the rest of you, I'm sorry to anyone who's advanced in years, but I'm headed there too. You know, like things they don't get better as you get older. I mean, maybe some people really just become so much more beautiful as they age. But
there is a tipping point
in regards to the elasticity of your skin and those sorts of things, the quantity of moles and freckles and hair and all of that and weirdness.
Yep.
That just, increases as you get older. So I'm like, well, add some tattoos. Who cares? Yeah. But anyways, what was your answer though? Because you can't just choose nubs. There's no third. You can't circumvent the process here.
Gosh. So did we determine like, are they growing at a slow rate or are they growing at flipper rate?
Let's just say like flipper for the sake of like you would still be functional to a point. You wouldn't be stuck on the couch with hands that were the size of a couch, but like, yeah.
I think I would have to go with hands. Yeah, I'd rather have big hands.
Mittens would be so expensive.
I'd make my own. So I'd learn how to knit.
So would choose.
Yeah, so what about you?
I would choose feet because you do so much more stuff with your hands.
Yeah.
You would have to be like Dwight Schrute.
Custom shoes, which are way more expensive than mittens.
Yeah, that's true. But expense-wise, I would be like a kangaroo. I would probably like find a way to monetize it and be like the human kangaroo.
Uh-huh.
can you imagine kicking someone with those bad boys?
If you can get them off the ground.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Ryan earlier. You would have some thick thighs from carrying around those feet.
You could probably be a really good swimmer though.
This is true. I didn't even think of that.
Like deep dive.
Because kangaroos have a tail they can sit back on, and I don't have anything like that. So I need.
That's good.
If I was gonna kick somebody with my massive feet, I would need some kind of kickstand. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't be in martial arts then. It would probably be better to be a swimmer.
Yeah.
But can you imagine trying to like use a smartphone with ginormous hands, Kristen? How are you gonna do that?
By then, I'll just ask Suri to do everything for me.
Dude, you could like, you could slap somebody like you could literally slap them into next week. But you could be like Dwight Schrute with like, have you seen that episode of The Office where he tries to do everything with his feet?
Yes.
And he's like, 10 minutes a day, that's all it takes. And then Jim is like, gives him a cup of hot coffee to grab with his feet.
I love The Office.
I know. Gosh, I've watched it so many times. Yeah, plug for The Office. All right, so you said hands, I said feet. Please, if you haven't weighed in already, we hope you have, but if you haven't weighed in already, please go to Facebook or our Instagram and weigh in. And for the next episode, the question that we're going to be answering is, would you rather be famous when you're alive and forgotten when you die, or unknown when you're alive and famous after you die? All right. So we're going to dive right into the episode content here. We're talking about the tail end of verse 3 in Titus 2, and we're going to also discuss verse 4. So just to refresh here, older women likewise are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips, nor enslaved to much wine. We discussed this in the last episode. Here's what we're going to touch on. Teaching what is good, that they may encourage the young women to love their husbands and to love their children. All right, so jumping into our discussion here, we want to start with, they are to teach what is good. Older women, in this role that Paul has assigned them, are to teach what is good. So what is our standard of good? I think that's a good starting point.
Are you asking me or do you want to answer that first?
I'm asking you.
You're asking me.
Yeah.
All right. So very basically, the standard of good is God. Your typical Sunday school answer, Jesus. But it's true.
Jesus.
I'm really good at Sunday school answers. Jesus. When I'm just like, no, but, so yes. So our basic standard of good is God. It's why we did an episode of the law of God, is because everything that we are encouraging and admonishing and teaching and instructing are good things from the flow of God's law. And, how are we to know what is good apart from Him? Like, if something else outside of God is good, then we should worship and serve that thing, right? So, and how are we to know what is bad unless we are taught? And again, like, if something outside of God teaches us, what is bad, then we should really be not follow God. We should be following this other thing, right? So God is our ultimate standard for what is good, and He lays those standards out throughout Scripture. The law clarifies and brings light to us, knowing how to show love to God and to others. Does this sound familiar a little bit? Jesus sums up the 10 commandments in loving God with all your mind, your heart, your strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself in Matthew 22:37. Any instruction that you give as an older, mature lady should point back to the Lord and what He commands. In this role, not really a role, because it's not a role. It's not you're not winning a Miss America pageant where you have this role, this scepter, this crown that you get to go around, but it's just a calling that all older women have. And it isn't a let's point back to me and look at this life that I have lived, and I have raised all these children, and I have been the best wife ever, and I have, perfectly submitted to my husband. But it's calling younger women back to love the Lord, back to love their kids, back to love their husbands. Did I say Lord, husbands, kids? Yeah. Those three things, which is why we wrap up our episodes as we do, just calling people back to loving those three things. Not any, we aren't pointing to our lives, although we do use some examples, mostly of what not to do for me. But yeah, we're to call it back to our standard, which is the Lord and His law and His precepts.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add?
No, that's very good. I think we covered a lot of this in regards to what our standard of good is in our episode on law and gospel. And I just love that you reminded our listeners that God Himself is our standard.
Mm-hmm.
And God's word is how we know what that looks like.
Right.
It's not this woo-woo thing that we're seeking out via our senses, our feelings, our,
or even
our
opinion.
experiences,
Yeah.
our opinion. It is this concrete defined thing. So when older women are called to teach what is good, they are called to teach what is in keeping with God's word.
Yeah.
Period. That is their standard. That is what they're supposed to be standing on to admonish. For that reason, it equips us to admonish one another in spite of lack of experience, differences in experience, differences in how long we've been walking with the Lord, how, all of these things that we could say, well, I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to step into that role. You are equipped if you have God's word in your hands,
mm-hmm.
and you know the gospel and you know this God. So we want to get into the second question. So it says to teach what is good and so train the young women to love their husbands and children. So the training of the young women to love husbands and children is what is good. So what does it mean to love biblically? I think that's the next really important question for us to ask, because our culture has completely kidnapped the word love.
Yeah, I was going to say hijacked.
Hijacked. Yeah, that was, it's probably a better kidnapped. I was like, wait,
I'm going to take it.
Yes, I'm like, well, yeah, they kidnapped the real love, and they
wrote a ransom note.
They stuck it in a basement, and then they replaced it with a, I don't know. Thank you, Kristen. Hijacked. Hijacked the biblical concept of love and have replaced it with a feeling. Like it's this feeling of affection. So are these older women to teach younger women to feel affectionately towards their husbands and children?
Their hearts.
No. Right. Has nothing to do with that. It's nice to feel affection. Are you always going to feel affection towards your husband? Nope. I can tell you right now, no, absolutely not. Nope. I mean, gosh, maybe you're a fairy tale. Maybe you are. But life is hard and marriage is hard. And you are going to walk through some really difficult things in your marriage, and you're going to walk through some really difficult things when you're parenting your children. And you need to be able to love them in spite of how you're feeling. So do you want to touch on the biblical definition of love, Kristen?
Sure. So we'll just pull up 1 Corinthians 13 here. It's a great definition of what love is. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable, ruh-roh, or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. So, yeah.
Yeah. In John 15:13, we have, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Yeah. It's this abandonment of self for the good of another person. and it's an action. Jesus said, "If you love me, you will obey my commands."
Right.
There are so many verses speaking of love as something that you do, not
Mhm.
something that you feel.
Right.
And we've kind of lost that as a culture. So when we are talking about love here in regards to loving your children and loving your husband, we're talking about this type of
Active. Yeah.
sacrificial active love.
Mhm.
You're laying your own life down for the sake of another. Um it's a sacrificial type thing.
Right.
Yes, and Christ himself models that for us in that while we were still sinners, he died for us. This is how he shows his love
Mhm.
for his church and for the Father.
Right.
So, moving into more specifics on now that we know that scripture itself is our standard of good, that it's a reflection of who God is and what his character and nature are, what he requires of us in order to image him. And now that we know what love is biblically as an action on the part of another person, what are some ways that scripture tells us we are to love our husbands?
Sure. So, um, one way that we can love our husbands is to be intentionally affectionate toward him and regularly. Um, so, of course, I have a scripture to support that because that goes against common um, marriage advice today. So 1 Corinthians 7:1. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relation. It is, sorry, let me rewind that. It is good for a man not to have sexual relationships with a woman, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self control. So, without opening a huge can of worms today, um, we do want to talk about and address this topic of giving yourself to your husband. We'll get more into this topic and kind of um, address some of the nuances of what that might look like, what it doesn't look like in a different episode. However, there is a time and a place for abstinence or abstaining from the marriage bed within marriage. Paul qualifies this by saying that you need to devote yourselves to prayer, but then to come together because of your lack of self control. And there's even a time, a sense of urgency of like, devote yourselves to prayer, but then come again together. And it's an agreement that you have between you and your husband for a limited time, it says. And so this isn't just, you know, out of because you're really angry with each other or whatever, and you're just giving him the cold shoulder for a few days or a few weeks or a few months or whatnot. But this abstaining season has a purpose. And the purpose is that you guys are both pursuing the Lord um, during that time, and that there is an agreed upon time to come together again. And it isn't just this open it isn't just open, you know. Um, and yeah, it isn't open. I'll just leave it there. Um, so some of you in your marriages may have made practice of ignoring one another, maybe not addressing issues in your marriage that would cause this separation or a lack of frequency. There's many reasons for that. There are many seasons in which things need to be adjusted. Maybe you just had a baby, maybe you're ill. There could be sin that one of you has brought into the marriage that needs to be addressed. But these issues need to have a plan. Again, you don't just get to like be mad and vindictive and withhold, um, affection from your husband just because he did something stupid. He may have well done something really dumb and really egregious and very sinful. Absolutely. But these issues need a plan. And if you and your husband have not been able to agree on the plan, depending on the issue, then you really need to get your pastor involved immediately, like yesterday. Um, yeah, it can just, as scripture says, it can open the door to Satan, basically. Um, so, I mean, if you've just had a baby or you're approaching other seasons in life that might affect your hormones or just the comfortability of being intimate with your husband, like these are very, very common issues, actually. And I don't think um, women really realize that these are real issues that especially after having a baby you just feel different about your body, you feel very different about intimacy. And if you feel comfortable, you definitely not if you feel comfortable you definitely need to talk to your husband about it and be open in communicating with how you're feeling so that he doesn't think that there's something more going on there that isn't. And then again, come up with a plan. If you can't come up with a plan, then yeah, you need counsel, whether it might include medical help. There's definitely things that doctors can do to help you along with that. It just might be, just some basic wisdom that your pastor has for you, just different routines and things that can be put into place to help you kind of get into that mindset. But bottom line is to seek godly counsel and just have a plan. And over time, oftentimes things they will improve.
Right.
It's just especially with the baby, like it is just a season. You have a lot of exhaustion, you have a lot of um moms describe it as kind of being like touched out, like
Right.
you're breastfeeding, you're have hormones, you have if you have other children, like they're needing your attention and you just feel like, "Ah." Those are real feelings, but um when they start impacting your relationship with your husband, you definitely need to be communicative with him in that and, you know, yeah, come up with a plan to work through those things.
Yeah, I was thinking about the verse in First Corinthians 7 where it says, "Now to the unmarried and widows I say this, it is good for them to remain unmarried as I am, but if they cannot control themselves, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion."
Yeah.
And this isn't the only place where we see that one of the primary admonitions towards marriage is to rightly satisfy this desire for sexual intimacy.
Hmm.
It's a God given desire. So I think women can, in these seasons where, whatever your reason is, and men do this too, but we can tend to think of, well, gross. Why, why, why will he not leave me alone?
Hmm.
Like, that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
we have to remember, and this is why it's important to talk about. We have to remember that this is a God given desire and this is God's intention for marriage. This is a
Yeah.
primary purpose of marriage is to come together and to rightly satisfy that desire, and also to produce children and all of these other things that naturally come out of that type of engagement. So, um, I think, yes, as awkward as it is to dive right into this, it is such a clear passage of scripture in regards to how men and women are to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the other. It says very clearly that your body belongs to your husband and his body belongs to you.
Hmm.
So it is this, abandoning of total ownership.
Hmm.
And I think in our culture where we can, man, there's just a lot to it in regards to bodily autonomy and
Hmm.
not, and respecting one another's boundaries. And that's all really important. But I think biblically we have to be careful to recognize that this really is a command,
Right.
and it's one that we are to obey, and we are to be moving towards obedience if we are not in a place
Mhm.
right now. And like Kristen said, if you need to seek counsel for issues in your marriage that may be keeping you from that, seek counsel from your pastors. If you are feeling, um, just like you couldn't in good conscience engage in that because of, whatever's in your heart, go to your pastor and your elders,
Mhm.
go to your husband and get that medical help that you need. And realize that, this is a really serious issue in the church. It's a
Mhm.
really serious issue in the lives of a lot of women, because we are bearing children and we are going through these hormonal changes, and it's a lot to navigate in marriage, and the way that we handle this could really harm or really help our marriages. And walking through this in the right way, even though it's hard, and seeking to obey, even though you're going to have to work through a lot, will put you in a position to, when you are older and you're able to counsel another woman,
Right.
to counsel her from a place of experience.
Right.
So yeah, it's important for us to talk about that. So what are some other ways that we love our husbands according to scripture? I think Proverbs 31, as cliche as it's become, is
Mhm.
so rich and so filled with just really good admonitions in regards to how we can actively love our husbands. Proverbs 31 says, "The heart of her husband, of this excellent wife, the heart of her husband trusts in her, to be trustworthy, to be consistent, to be dependable, somebody that he can rely on, um, somebody that he does not feel is an adversary to him or
Mhm.
could, be doing him harm." And that really gets into the verse there that says, "She does him good and not harm all the days of her life." Somebody, loving your husband means purposing, and just love in general, purposing to do good for the other person, even when it's hard. And that is such a difference in regards to the cultural definition of love and the biblical definition of love. The loving thing sometimes hurts the person because you have to say hard things and you have to be willing to call them to the mat when they're whiling or whatever. But yeah, your husband is going to trust you because he's going to know that your disposition towards him is a disposition of benevolence.
Right.
You are not there to hurt him, you're there to help him and to do good to
Mhm.
him even when it's hard.
Yeah, and I think it's, important to find out a woman who does this is it goes on to say it likens this kind of woman to being more precious than jewels.
Mhm.
And, earlier in the Proverbs, I think in Proverbs 12, it calls a woman of noble character the crown of her husband.
Mhm.
We are his glory. And what an impact that we can have on our husbands by, building him up in this way. Um, and yeah, in keeping his confidence and yeah, where his heart trusts us. Um, Also in Proverbs 31, I think, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, is her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Proverbs 31:23. So the scripture doesn't directly say that because of what she said or did that he's known in the gates, but it is kind of planted in the middle of
Mhm.
the portion of scripture where it's like, and she does this for her household, and she clothes this, and she makes this linen, and she does that, and she doesn't fear snow because she's done this. And then her husband is known in the gates where he sits among the elders of the land. So there's definitely, I think, implication there that she honestly is a very industrious businesswoman. It goes on saying that she considers a field and she buys it with her own money. And so a lot of those transactions happened in the gates with those people. So um, her her reputation and the way she talks about her husband, um, precedes him. And so, I just think it's an important reminder of like, how are we talking about our husbands to others?
Right.
Husband bashing is such a normal thing. We have whole TV shows based upon the idiot husband and the, super smart wife. And it's just, an accepted thing in our culture to do. And, and that's not something that we should really partake of at all. Um,
Even oversharing. I think people
yeah.
can think husband bashing is just when you're intentionally exaggerating his faults, but
Hmm.
sharing indiscretion, like in your husband's life without the real, like tangible possibility of that person stepping in and helping
Right.
harms his name.
Right.
You may be telling your mother something very true about your husband,
Right.
and you may be seeking help for yourself and telling her that, or you may be saying that you are.
Hmm.
But ultimately your heart, she's not the person that's been put in your life for that purpose.
Right.
There are people you can go to if you're struggling with your husband's sin
Right.
in a discreet way so that his name is preserved. And I had the same note here in regards to preserving your husband's name.
Hmm.
Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land.
Hmm.
Yeah, in your own conduct and also in regards to the way that you speak of him, your reputation and his, that matters.
Right.
And not this like reputation based on other people's unbiblical expectations, but in
Right.
regards to you are clearly authentically both pursuing holiness
Right.
and a life a life lived in service to the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a way that you can speak about your husband or that your husband can even speak about you. I think it goes both ways. When you're struggling or when he's struggling or you're both struggling, that, yeah, so I think like what we're not saying is like you can't ever like confide in someone about what's going on in your marriage or you can't be 100% real. Yeah, be that 100%, but not with everybody. Like there's
Yeah.
just a discretion there because the purpose of, I would hope that the purpose in sharing something with someone regarding your husband or your spouse or whoever's listening right now um, would be that person would be admonish you if they see sin in
Right.
your response and to encourage reconciliation between you and your husband and advice on how to biblically maybe handle whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah.
So I think I know just I think it's good to have counselors in a not necessarily in a professional term, but people that you and your husband have agreed upon and designated to be your people.
Right.
So that, I have people that my husband can share things with that he doesn't need my permission to
Right.
share, that I trust their discretion and their judgment. And I know that if I am in sin, that they will come to me and be like, hey,
Mhm.
so you shouldn't be doing that. Or if he's in sin, I know that they are going to set him right. And so I do think that that is an important element in a marriage and in counsel. But yeah, so I'm not saying don't share, but I do think that there is a discretionary rule here that you shouldn't share with everybody.
Yep.
It kind of goes. I mean, honestly, it's slanderous, and if you've listened to our last episode, there's a lot of warnings against slander, and you don't want to be slanderous against your husband. You don't want to be gossiping about him.
Yeah.
So just because he's your husband doesn't mean that you should share everything about his faults or whatever.
Right. Choose
So,
wisely
yeah,
and be charitable
yeah,
and be very thoughtful about what you share and how you share it.
hmm
And I'm sure that if you're like, well, I just don't have someone like that,
Mhm.
Go to your pastor or your elders and ask them who could be someone to confide in for
Yeah.
you, especially an older woman in the church, an elder's wife, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, it's important for you to be going to the right people
Right.
and to be careful. I mean, who you share with in regards to their own sins. There are some people who are just more prone to gossip,
Mm.
and you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um Another way that we love our husbands is by being a wise counselor to him. Proverbs 19:14 says, "A prudent wife is from the Lord." That's somebody that has wisdom, that has insight, that is a faithful counselor in regards to accurately assessing. Just when we were talking about this last episode, reverence in knowing how to respond appropriately according
Mhm.
to a person or a place or an action, or in regards to the Lord, somebody who's instructed in the word and is able to give counsel that will lead the person in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a team. We are called to submit to our husbands, but wisdom personified is female.
Mhm.
There's this, and that's a privilege to us
Right.
in regards to this is, it speaks highly of what God intends
Mhm.
for women in regards to the way that we think and speak and use our influence, especially our influence over our husband.
Yeah.
And there are times where your husband is going to need that, and you may hold him back from something, not in exerting authority over him, but just in being able to gently and respectfully speak the truth to him.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that is a way of loving him.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, do you have any other thoughts on that part?
On prudence or on being a wise counselor?
Yeah. Mhm.
No.
Okay. Um, I also think that there's um just not to be contentious. There are so many would you rathers in Proverbs, or that is like, would you rather sleep on the rooftop of your house or be in under the same roof with a quarrelsome wife?
Right.
Would you rather live in the desert or be in the same household with a um, quarrelsome wife?
And it gives us the right answer,
And
which is desert.
right. so, so yeah, like you don't want to be contentious. And one way that we can be contentious is just keeping records of wrong, bringing up old battles, bringing up old sins that you have already worked through, that you have already forgiven him for, or he has forgiven you for. And it's important. Like, we need to model Christ to everybody, and that includes our husbands. And um, Christ does not, he washes our sins, right? Like, he does not hold us accountable. Um, and he doesn't bring those up to us. Like, we are completely covered in his righteousness and in his perfection. And um, we need to be that to we need to show that to our husbands, to everybody, right? Like, um, you know, we need to forgive as Christ has forgiven us, and that's important to do. Um, in being married, we are living under each other's microscopes. It's just a fact. Everything about the other person is magnified. And if the person is just wonderful and glorious, that wonder and glory will be magnified. Um, if a person is uh yeah, contentious, that will also be magnified. If your person is maybe a little bit messy, that will be magnified. If all these little things can be magnified. And so I think it's important to have a lot of I hate this cliche, but I'm going to use it, just to have a lot of grace toward your husband, that you don't bring up every single little offense that he does, that really, in the grand scheme of things, may or may not, just doesn't really have a whole lot of bearing. Um, Proverbs 17:9 says, "Whoever conceals an offense promotes love, but he who brings it up separates friends." So, just in order to keep peace, it's okay to overlook small things. Laundry on the floor, a dish at the table it doesn't take to the sink. Those types of things are very small offenses, and honestly, like, not really not worth the disruption of peace in the house to bring up. Um, really, in the grand scheme of things. And, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that if there's some egregious sin that you don't confront your husband on. Um, that's not what this is talking about. But this is more of the little piddly things that one might do. That's just more of a nuisance than a sin.
Right.
So yeah,
That's not building up.
no,
That's tearing down.
right.
And if you really had concern for your husband in being in some particular sin, that wouldn't be the biblically
Right.
that wouldn't be a biblical way to approach him.
Right.
And it's okay for us to admonish our husbands biblically if it's in the right way and in the right time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, 1 Peter 3, where we're told that if our husbands are not obedient to the word, to win them without a word.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's really that grand of an offense where you're concerned for him and you do want to do what's good for him, and coming alongside him as that prudent and wise counselor, you want to be sure that you're doing it in the right way. And it's definitely not to nag him over a plate that he didn't take to the sink.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
It's not insisting on your own way, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we forget that.
Yes. I think one way we love our husbands is to manage well the fruit of his labors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could take this to mean, and this is kind of something I was thinking of when I'm reading through Proverbs 31 again in regards to how she's managing her household. Clearly he's not the only financial provider there. So I'm not trying to take it in that way, like manage your husband's paycheck well. But just generally, let's talk about what God requires of your husband. God requires that your husband protect you. He requires that your husband provide for you. He requires that your husband lead you. How are you supporting him in that? How are you managing the fruit of his labors in that? Are you making that job easy when he's called to provide for you? Are you making it difficult? Are you squandering the things that God has given you both? Are you being irresponsible? Are you setting that precedent? Are you setting that pattern and that example? Are you making it easy for him to lead you, or are you making it difficult?
Ouch.
In Ephesians 5, when we're told that we are to submit to our husbands and everything is unto the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
how seriously are you taking that?
Mm-hmm.
I know there's going to be a lot of overlap in this episode with things that we've discussed in our episode on Christian or a Christian woman's character. But I mean, the Lord is going to hold your husband accountable for the way that he leads and provides and protects. Are you being a thorn in his foot or a thorn in his side, or what? I don't know what the phrase is there,
Side.
but yeah,
or
it's
a
just
foot. I mean, that's equally as painful and annoying.
right. Are you do you have this in mind that your husband's going to give an account for you? Are you helping him in doing his job well?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that in mind? Are you helping him be the provider that God calls him to be? Are you helping him to be the leader that God calls him to be? Are you helping him to be the protector that God calls him to be? Are you getting your household in really dangerous situations because of your negligence or lack of wisdom or recklessness?
Mm-hmm.
Rushing into things without thinking of them. Everyone makes mistakes, but one way that you love your husband is to support him and to come alongside him and help him in fulfilling his duty to you. And I think as women, we can kind of say, well, he owes this to me.
Mm-hmm.
No, he owes it to God. His job is to God. Like his duty, his job is to God. His duty is to God first and foremost. And yes, you benefit from that. But you guys are playing out this grander thing in the world in your marriage. He is loving you as Christ loves the church, and you're submitting to him as the church submits to the Lord Jesus. And there's something bigger than you happening there. So your husband's duty is not first and foremost to you, it's to the Lord. And I think it's a wrong way to approach it, to say, well, am I getting what I should from him? Instead, we should be saying, is he fulfilling his duty to the Lord? And what are some ways that I can help him do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot not be a thorn in his side or a nag and saying, I keep wanting to make a naggy voice, but I feel like I'm going to sound like Michael Scott when he's like, does Pam sound like this to Jim? Like, Jim,
You can do it. Do it.
take the kids to the zoo. I want to eat some bonbons. All right, that's my little ranty rant there.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. Yeah.
And these are just some ways. I mean, we are going to have so many episodes just diving in. So many of these episodes that we're doing right now are just like introductions to really getting into the specifics of what it looks like to be a wife and a mother. But these are just some examples of, we know that the Titus 2 woman, that older woman who is the Titus 2 woman, every older woman, I don't know what kind of song that was, but we know that she's called to teach what is good, and in so doing, to train young women to love their husbands. And these are some of the ways, just a few of the ways that Scripture specifically calls us to love our husbands. So now let's get into just some of the specific ways. Unless, do you have any more?
No.
Sorry.
Yeah,
now let's get into some of the specific ways that Scripture calls us to love our children.
Do you want me to start?
You can start. I have a list, but you can.
All right. So I think kind of the low-hanging fruit, the big E on the eye chart, so I'm going to go for it, is we love our children by teaching them about the Lord and raising them in his ways. I was reminded of the scripture in Deuteronomy. It's Deuteronomy 6:4. It starts out with a Shema, which is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Again, does that sound familiar? These words I am commanding you today are to be upon your hearts, and you shall teach them diligently to your children and speak of them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the doorposts of your houses and your gates. When we fail to do this, we allow for other things, other gods, other idols to come into their lives. It's interesting because I'm trying to go through this Bible reading challenge, and I'm horribly behind, but wanted to at least try to be in the same book of the Bible that my group is in. So the other day, I was reading the first couple of chapters of Judges to my kids, and then I came across Judges 2:10, and it says, And all the generation also were gathered to their fathers, and there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work he had done for Israel. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods, for among the gods of the people who were around them, and bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. And it was interesting because after the Shema in Deuteronomy, it goes all into, you need to get rid of this tribe and this tribe and this tribe and that tribe before you before you take over that land. They're going into the promised land. And then in Judges, they didn't do that. They didn't do any of what God had said. And so now they're all living amongst all these different tribes and stuff. And they're actually like worshiping the very idols that the people there are worshiping. And I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting point that they ignored the heeding of, or they ignored what God commanded them to basically teach them the commandments, right? And as a result, they have all this whole generation that does not even know the Lord or the good that he has done for them. Because of this, the Lord's anger is provoked against that entire generation. I don't want that for my kids. Like, I don't want to, I don't want like my lack of teaching to like cause the Lord's anger and wrath to be heaped upon my children because they don't know the things that I didn't teach them, right? And so that is not loving when we don't teach our kids about the Lord, and not just about him, but teach his commandments and teach what God has done, and even just in our lives. So I was super convicted about that, and have, since it's November, and well, right now it's November. I don't know when we're releasing this, but just teaching my kids and going through like, what are we thankful for? Like, what has God done for us? And it's easy to look at the kind of the gloom and doom of what is 2020 and to focus on all the bad things. But the Lord has really blessed us in a lot of really positive ways too. And I think it's important to bring your kids along into that and teach them to be thankful and, to give God praise. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
That was the number one on my list, too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Proverbs
funny.
22:6, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. One of the primary ways that we love our kids is to train them and to teach them.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Proverbs 1:8-9. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. That's what our instruction is to be to them.
Yeah.
And it's not based in our own subjective ideas about what our kids should and shouldn't do. It's teaching them to be obedient to God because we know that that's what's best for them. That's the path to joy, and that's the path to peace. And I mean, if we love the Lord, why wouldn't we want that for them? If we see the beauty of his law because we see that it's a reflection of who he is, and we love his law because we love who he is, and we want to image him because we love who he is, how could we not train them? I mean, and I kind of separated these in my notes, teaching and instructing and training, because you can tell your kids, all kinds of things that are true, and you can still not put in the work to train them to obey.
Right.
That's where the rubber meets the road. I wrote down in my note, I do have like little Samsung notes, and I'll think of something to kick myself in the butt with later when I'm disciplining my kids. And I wrote down, if I command something, I need to be willing to put in the work to make sure they obey it. That I owe that to them, and I owe that to the Lord if I'm going to tell them to do something. So, I mean, teaching your children about the Lord and about his statutes and his law, like Kristen was saying, but then also putting in the work to make sure that they're developing the habits and learning to obey. Because it is a practice. Like, it's like stretching. It's like working a muscle.
Right.
Yeah. And that's hard on our part, to take the time to be there and to make sure they're doing what they should. It's so much easier to let it go and to tell them the right thing and think we've done our duty to them, but that's not the loving thing. We have authority over them, and we need to come alongside them, and we need to actually help them to do what's right. And it's so ironic because I was just talking to Kristen about I feel like I have to say this because in between our recording of our episodes, I was like, girl, Gatsby this kid, what do I do? And I love my son. I love him so much. But man, it's hard to 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 come alongside and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. But that's what's necessary.
Well, and that's what God does to us.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the ironic thing is, like, I distinctly remember, and this has been pretty recent, I would say, like, within the last 6 months, like, I don't exactly remember what it was, but whatever it was, it happens all the time. And I wish I could remember what it was, but I don't remember what it was. And my husband was just like so frustrated with my older son. He was like, why do I have to tell you this again? Why do you continue to do this? And then it was just like, you could just see this like epiphany, like look come across his face. And like, that is what the Lord is dealing with when he deals with us.
Yeah.
Is we sin all the time. We really do. Whether you believe it or not, whether you think about it or not, we are not perfect. And many of us, including myself, struggle with the same sin. And we may go longer periods in between without, doing the same offense, but we will do it over and over and over again. And God is so patient with us. I also separated teaching about the Lord. I separated that with discipline as well, just like you were talking about. So I think that's kind of funny. But we are called to like disciple, discipline, instruct our kids. Why do we do that? It's part of it is because we're an image bearer of the Father, right? We were created in his image. We reflect how he responds to his children, whom he loves. And so Proverbs 3:11 says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof, for the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights." And so, man, that is why we disciple. That is why we discipline our kids, is because we love them. And I'll tell my kids all the time, like, do you see me? Because they're like, why can't I just do XYZ, whatever it is? Why am I getting in trouble? Why am I grounded? Why am I this? Why am I that? And it's just like, because I love you. Do you see me going into the next door neighbors and like disciplining their kids? No. Well, because I don't love them. I love you, and I want you to serve the Lord. I want you to be respectful. I want you to, all the things. And so we do this out of love for our kids, just as the Father does to us for his love for us, and he delights in us. Proverbs is full of mothers and fathers giving instruction to their kids and encouraging their sons, and it applies to daughters, to not forsake the instruction or the law of God. Proverbs 31, actually this was a new revelation to me, is a queen's instruction or oracle to her king's son Lemuel, which I thought was kind of cool. I had never put that together until we were doing the study on something for one of our episodes, and I was like, huh. But Proverbs 29:15, "The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother." Yeah. This is what happens when we don't disciple our kids. Proverbs 4:1, "Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, be attentive that you may gain insight, for I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words, keep my commandments, and live. Do not enter the path of the wicked. Do not walk in the way of evil." So we really need to, invest our time in giving instructions over and over to our kids and discipling them. And like you were saying, like putting good habits into their walks with the Lord, because, hopefully they will have their own walks. That's what we pray. That's what we intend to happen. As our covenant kids.
Yeah, and it's hard work.
It's really hard
It's
work.
hard work because not only do you have to help them put their sin to death and teach them what that looks like,
Right.
you have to do the same.
Right. Yeah. You're working quadruple time.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever. Quintuple time.
Quintuple time.
Because you have 4 kids. I have 4 kids. Plus yourself. You're just killing slings and all over the place.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Hopefully it's not getting the best of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's it takes a lot of self-control, especially because you're going to get mad.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about it in other episodes. You may not think you have an issue with anger until you have kids. You may not think you have an issue with impatience until you have kids. And walking through these things and training yourself and actually being able to put your sin to death in this and get off the couch when you're not motivated to go and handle that sin that has been committed for the umpteenth time today, in spite of all the times that you've disciplined before. Going through that is going to put you in a position where you're able to understand and help a woman who is in that situation when you are an older woman and you're in the position of needing to counsel her and come alongside her and encourage her. And again, it's not necessary for you to experience that in order for you to be able to do that. However, what you're doing right now is really just sowing those seeds that will bear fruit later. Not only in the lives of your children, but also in the lives of other women when you come alongside them and you actually know what it's like to be in the trenches and not to flounder through it.
Right.
And resign yourself to floundering.
Yeah.
Because girl, I'm talking to Kristen, but y'all, I'm floundering right now. I just had a baby. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 5. She just turned 5. And my goodness, this is some work. But, learning to love your children in teaching them and training them and disciplining them is worthwhile. Absolutely. Not only for your legacy and subsequent generations, but also for the church and being able to do that. And it will hone you as a person and sanctify you as a person in ways that other people will benefit from, even in just day-to-day interactions. You will be a much better person for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of, piggyback a little bit on what you were saying, is we need to take the time to invest into them.
Yeah.
Parenting is not a side. You can't do it from the sidelines. You are in it, and we see in Deuteronomy that the admonition there to teach the child, when they wake up and by the road and all these things. Like, the assumption there is that you are with your children a lot. That's the assumption, that you are there constantly, teaching them these things and parenting them and discipling them. And I know right now it's easier in the sense that we are all homeschooling in 2020.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club, whether you like it or not. So, it may not have been your practice before. Maybe you sent them to public school or private school, and so there's definitely a period of adjustment. But I do think that this is kind of a reset that we have been able to, that we've been given an opportunity to do, to have a positive influence on their lives, to have a godly influence over there. It is very difficult. Like, you don't get the sense from Deuteronomy that it's just mom and dad taking the kids to church once a week and teaching them and doing the right thing, the right thing, my air quotes, and then not having any kind of discussion the rest of the week or throughout the days or that. No, you get the impression that this is something that the parents are constantly and continually bringing up and beating in a good way, not literally, but, getting into their child, beating into their child, again, not in a bad way, but, just in a proverbial
not literally
way.
Beating.
Not literally, but just that, this is something that is constantly, these are conversations that you're constantly having. and it may seem redundant and it may seem frustrating, like you were, sharing with Gatsby. Like you're just like, I have to do this all the time. Welcome to Deuteronomy.
It's not working. I did it 3 times and I got to do it still.
Yeah, I did it for a week and he isn't learning. Yeah. Yep. 37 years and I still do a lot of the same things. But, yeah, so I don't know. It saddens me that I scroll through Facebook posts of parents absolutely done with being around their kids during this time. It is honestly heartbreaking. I feel bad. How can we be content during this time? And it reminds me of, we read in a book study last year, Jeremiah Burroughs, in his book, The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment. How can we find our new duties and our new trials? Like, we have this big trial, we're disoriented, we need to reorient ourselves with grace and with gratitude and with contentment, and we need to find what our duties are. So how can we turn it around and make it into joy? How can we turn this trial into joy? And yes, having Zoom school is a trial for sure. I have one co-op class that is on Zoom, and I just want to jab my eyes out. So I'm preaching to myself because I'm like, oh my goodness. So yes, it is a trial, and I can absolutely empathize with people. But what a blessing to have your kids around more often. Look for ways to spend more one-on-one time. It's very difficult with, multiple kids to spend one-on-one time with your kids, and having no extracurricular activities has really opened up doors of opportunity for that. So, we've enjoyed subscriptions to Radish Kids, which is a little like monthly cooking box subscription that I do with my youngest boy. We've enjoyed movie nights even midweek because we don't have to get up early for school the next day. We've enjoyed reading books together and puzzles and walks and game night after dinner. We have a Monopoly game that we play several times a week. So this is a really unique time to invest in your kids without distractions. And, maybe you've always wanted to do a family devotional or family worship time. This is a great opportunity to put those things that you've always wanted to do into play, and you've, for good excuses or bad excuses, just haven't done it. And so, I don't know, I just really want to encourage people to make the investment into your kids because it will reap dividends.
Right. Sure. Yeah. That's good. The next thing I had on there was delight in your children.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's as a way of loving them, because scripture says they're a blessing to us. Yeah. Psalm 127:3 says, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. And it's so trendy in our culture to just bemoan, parenthood.
Yeah.
And to see it as this interruption to your real life. Mm-hmm. These little people are, saps on your energy and saps on your resources and saps on your youth and
saps on your body.
Yeah, you're just waiting to get through it, or you're waiting to escape, or hooray, they're off on the school bus. And there, of course, it is hard, and there are going to be times where it's okay to say, like, yeah, I need a break.
Yeah.
So I can regroup and I can get back in the fight. But by and large, children are a joy. And if you're not rejoicing in your day with them, you need to change your perspective first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Find a way to enjoy the people that they are, where they're at. There is a way.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're going through. There is a way. Get down on the floor with them and just preach the truth to yourself, that these are image bearers of God, that it's a privilege that you're able to do this work, that, one day you are going to miss all these little moments. You're going to miss the sticky cheeks. You're going to miss the matted hair. You're going to miss the fights. You're going to miss the clamor. You're going to miss the Cheerios under your feet, all of those things. But don't go the way of the world. I mean, be an example. And oh my goodness, what a treasure for you to train yourself to delight in your children in the hardest seasons with them, so that when you are an older woman, you can come alongside a younger woman and show her the beauty that's right in front of her when
Mhm.
she's struggling to see it herself.
Yeah.
It is hard sometimes when you're in the trenches and you need somebody to be able to snap you out of, you know, that like filter over your
Mhm.
eyes of the sin and the hardship and the physical and mental strain of it. Um, all of that, even find the beauty in that. All of that is making you into something, it's making you into the person that God created you to be. It's sanctifying you. It's gradually chipping away at your sin, and all of it is just wonderful, and we miss it. So delight in your children, see them as the reward that they are, not just as some future thing, but right now.
Mhm.
What you're experiencing right now is a treasure. It's a blessing, it's a benefit, it's a reward. And all the hardship is a reward, all the sweet things, don't miss any of it. So and be a witness and a testimony to the truth of God's word by not going along with your friends when they're bemoaning their role as a parent, and when they're complaining, you know, about everything. I'm like laughing because I was like, Kristen, just a
No,
second
but you
ago,
were
but
like legit asking like, what do I do? I don't want to, am I on the right track?
yeah,
Like that's different than just like
yeah,
I hate my kids and they're
right,
driving me
yes,
nuts and like I'm just so sick of them. That's not at
right.
all what your attitude was. Is like
Gosh,
I'm
this is
having yeah,
hard.
this is really hard and am I on the right track? And I
Right.
keep doing the same thing over again and
Right. Yeah, it's like a puzzle, but yeah, the entire thing is just a sweet blessing. Every single part of it. There's not a part of it that isn't. So believe that and delight in your children. That's how you love them. They're going to
Mhm.
tell.
Yeah,
They
they
they will
know.
be able to see, and
Yeah.
man, will they notice. You
Yeah.
may not think they do, but that will impact them. Seeing their parent delight in them and seeing their parent delight in the work instead of seeing that they are just this constant strain and nuisance to the person that God has given them to.
Right.
That matters. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Were there any other ways specifically?
Well, I'm sure there are, but I did not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just all
Lots.
right. So,
Yeah.
for this episode, I think we're going to wrap it up there in regards to just some specific ways that scripture tells us to love our husbands and to love our children. And the primary thrust of this is to show that there are specific ways. There is a biblical standard here, and there is benefit in training ourselves in this so that when we are older and we are called to, put our hands to the plow in this specific way laid out for older women in Titus 2, we will be thoroughly prepared for it. And we will have that experience under our belt. If you're listening to this as a young mom, you have the privilege of knowing the Lord now and seeing the work set before you now as the training ground so that when you are in that position, you can really be fit for it. So in the next episode, we're going to get into some real specifics in regards to what it means to be a worker in the home, what it means to be sensible, pure, kind, subject to your husband, and to protect the word of God so that it's not dishonored. And those are all going to be, we're probably going to get in a little bit deeper on each of those. So get ready. This is just an intro for what's coming. So yeah, until then, Kristen.
Go love your God, love your husband, and love your kids.